That's right, you saw the thumbnail, you read the title, demoknight is bad. Before I get to my opinion, let me go over some of the arguments which support the idea that demoknight is good. This very first claim is one that I actually agree on, just with a bit of a caveat. Demoknight is fun. Of course, what is fun and what isn't fun is going to be subjective. Different people just enjoy different things. Many TF2 players play demoknight because he is fun, and I am no different. This video is in no way arguing that demoknight is not fun. It is arguing that demoknight is bad. There's a difference. Argument number 2 is that demoknight is very tanky, especially when you consider Eyelander heads or half Satoichi overheal combined with the shield resistances. While this argument is mostly true, it is overlooking a few things that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this video. Another one you'll hear is that demoknight can one-shot 7 out of the 9 classes as long as they aren't overhealed. Well, regular Demoman can one-shot all of the classes with a bit of setup. I'll elaborate further on this argument later in this video as well. The final argument I hear often is that demoknight has powerful movement abilities. This is mostly referencing Trimping as well as Eyelander head movement speed. In order to get to maximum Eyelander heads, you need to get 5 kills with a melee weapon. This is not a reliable movement ability against decent players because you will have a hard time staying alive, partially because demoknight is so easily countered. More on that later. Regarding Trimping, while it is very fun, the long cooldown time as well as the lack of sticky bombs renders it more of a gimmick than an actual movement ability. You may be asking, how do sticky bombs have anything to do with Trimping? I need to point out a basic concept that is often overlooked when discussing the balance of a game like Team Fortress 2, opportunity cost. Essentially, there is a hidden downside to every single unlockable weapon in Team Fortress 2 that is not listed on the item card. That item is mutually exclusive to stock, as well as every other unlockable weapon in that item slot. When you equip a sword, a shield, and the booties, you are also unequipping the grenade launcher and the sticky bomb launcher. The crux of my argument boils down to this. The upsides of demoknight do not justify losing your sticky bomb launcher and grenade launcher. To reiterate, the upsides gained by equipping a full demoknight loadout are not worth the downside of losing both of your guns if you are trying to win. I'll split the rest of this video into 3 sections because all of my reasoning fits into one of these 3 categories. Demoknight is unreliable, demoknight is easily countered, and Demoman is incredibly strong. Team Fortress 2 is an extremely janky game, to such an extent that bizarre and random crap is shrugged off frequently as just source spaghetti.
What the fuck?
This jankiness can and often will get in the way of taking full advantage of demoknight's kit. Don't get me wrong, the source engine spaghetti can work in favor of demoknight, Trimping being a great example, but most of the time I find that the jank ends up harming more than helping. Other than questionable melee hit registration, demoknight also relies on inconsistent gimmicks and the other team's inexperience or lack of mechanics to gain the upper hand in battle. For some reason right now I'm just having this terrible sense of deja vu. I can't quite put my finger on what I'm thinking of here, but I'm sure it doesn't matter, I'll just move on. Arguably the most egregious offender when it comes to source spaghetti screwing over demoknight is Team Fortress 2's terrible melee hit registration. I mean, really, why is it that when I'm playing demoknight, hit registration is entirely unforgiving and sometimes just doesn't fucking work at all, but when I'm playing against a demoknight, the additional sword range goes from 50% to 500?
I'm sorry, what? I was like a mile away, wait.
Obviously, janky hit registration isn't just a demoknight problem, but it comes into play a lot more when your only source of damage is affected by it so frequently. Also, occasionally your shield charge is just cancelled by a tiny little edge or an unfortunately timed source of knockback. Of course, calling shield charges unreliable is the pot calling the kettle black when you consider that sticky jumping during combat is also kind of unreliable, but at least when a sticky jump is interrupted by something stupid, I don't have to wait for a 12-second cooldown before I can use my movement ability again. cause for Demonite's unreliability comes from his item upsides. His shield damage resistances are great.
Oh, hello. Okay. Hi.
But they are entirely ignored by hitscan weapons, which 7 of the 9 classes have access to in some form. To make matters worse, a Demonite using the Zatoichi or the Eyelander relies on getting killing blows with his sword, and can easily get screwed over by teammates stealing his kill or accidentally getting the frag with his shield bash. I don't like to use random crits when discussing balance, but I just can't help it here. Losing a fight I was going to win solely because my opponent got lucky happened all too often while getting clips for this video. While this is true for any playstyle on a server with random crits enabled, it certainly seems to affect Demonite more than regular Demoman. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Melee is far more likely to random crit, but none of Demonite's weapons can random crit for obvious balance reasons, well except the Skull Cutter. Random crits are just bad for balance in general, and in this case they just end up punishing the melee-only subclass for doing his job by being in melee range. Speaking of being in melee range, I think that this does a great job of exemplifying another aspect that makes Demonite bad: the need to put your hitbox in harm's way in order to deal any damage. As I mentioned like 20 times in my sticky spam video, stock Demoman is by far the best equipped class to deal damage without even seeing his opponent, which means he is able to deal damage without taking any. Meanwhile, Demonite has to literally charge into battle to deal a fraction of the damage his stock counterpart is capable of. Perhaps at this point you are still not convinced that Demonite is bad. Some of you might be saying, okay, that's cool, but how come I'm able to top score in casual as Demonite then? My reply to that is, of course it is still possible to do very well as a Demonite despite all of these downsides, but I would argue that in order to succeed as a Demonite, you must be significantly better at the game than your opponents. Let me elaborate. Saying that Demonite is easily countered is the understatement of the century. I mean century, like with a U. Anyways, Demonite gets countered so incredibly hard it almost hurts. Usually in Team Fortress 2, there are matchups that are rather unfavorable, but still winnable given the right situation. A great example is Scout versus Engineer. A well-placed level 3 is going to completely deny a Scout if he tries to push the Engineer, but if the Scout is patient and waits for the gun to be sapped or die, the fight is suddenly in his favor. He can also use his pistol to spam the gun out from outside its range, or even use Bonk to distract the gun for his team or flank behind the Engineer nest. Compare Scout's matchup versus Engineer, which is difficult but doable for Scout, to Demonite's matchup versus Engineer. The difference is night and day. The extent that a full Demonite has to go to in order to deal with a leveled sentry is just comical, especially when you consider that regular Demoman has no trouble at all with the same exact thing. In fact, Demonite has a funny pattern of getting countered by things that regular Demoman can kill by just looking in their direction. Pyro's Air Blast can easily and reliably push you away from your target and out of melee range. Demoman can just sticky spam the Pyro. Heavy can and will shred you in an instant at close range. Why are you running at the guy with a minigun when all you have is a sword?
There's 3 heavies, man. Go on a fucking 15 kill streak and then the other team just all goes heavy.
Demoman does not have any issue dealing with the heavy from mid-range. I was originally going to move on to the next class, but I got a clip that perfectly exemplifies the Demonite versus Heavy matchup, and I have to insert it here.
Holy shit.
Wait, this is actually like a really good clip.
Oh, there's a demo coming. Oh my god.
Dude, I've
Holy
killed
fucking
so many
shit.
people in the last like 5 seconds.
Like, actually tower defense.
Medic is another pretty decent counter to Demonite, although I don't usually hear people talking about it, unlike Engineer, Pyro, and Heavy. Medics themselves are easy to deal with as a Demonite, but the biggest threat to you is never going to be the Medic. It's his Patient and his Uber Charge. Some classes that you can normally one-shot with a crit swing are able to tank a crit swing when overhealed, and many other matchups that are difficult but winnable are rendered a completely lost cause by an overheal. A fully buffed heavy is essentially unkillable unless you are using a weapon that has random crits, or the heavy is a fresh install. Again, if you are significantly better than your opponents, none of this really matters. Game balance only really comes into play when players are relatively close in skill. Unlike the other classes that I've mentioned, regular Demoman can also struggle quite a bit with Medic. But Medic is just the best class in the game after all. But stock Demoman has both insane burst damage potential as well as very good sustain damage because of his large clip, meaning that dealing with overhealed players is much simpler for him. The final hard counter to Demoknight is Scout, and again this is a matchup that isn't fantastic for stock Demoman, but he's got a lot of options compared to Demoknight's simple plan. Get close and chop off his head. Speaking of heads, if you have a lot of Eyelander heads built, this is actually a pretty good matchup if you can use your shield charge to get close. On the flip side, fighting a Scout is absolutely terrible if you don't have Eyelander heads and if you're not able to close the initial distance for a long enough time to get your swings in. Again, all of these counters and bad matchups don't mean you can't do well as a Demoknight, it just means that Demoknight is weaker than stock Demoman. If someone is able to top score a pub as Demoknight, they most likely would have had a similar or better result running stock. Countering Demoknight really isn't that hard, all it takes is building a sentry gun or just air blasting him and air blasting him and air blasting him again. But stock Demoman is a different story. It takes a lot more ability to counter a competent default Demoman. Most people probably already know that sticky spam is kind of overpowered, but it is relevant to the topic. Again, the lack of sticky bombs is the primary downside to equipping a shield, even though the weapon card doesn't say it. If you are familiar with my channel, then you already know I can rant about the sticky bomb launcher for an impressive amount of time, so I'll keep it short. Sticky bombs provide reliable, on-demand area denial. Sticky bombs can deal great burst damage at a safe range via traps and sinks. The sticky bomb launcher has a giant clip, meaning Demo can sustain his high damage per second for a long time. Also, you have 4 grenades in your back pocket. Both sticky bombs and grenades deal area of effect damage. Area of effect, or AoE, is really good in casual. 24 players is a lot of players to be crammed into one server, so being able to deal multi-target damage is fantastic. The closest Demoknight gets to this is the Caber, which, don't get me wrong, I love the Caber, but as far as survivability goes, it is a bit lackluster. All of these abilities basically just mean that a stock Demoman is very well equipped to deal a lot of damage, and competent demo players will do exactly that with frightening reliability. As I have mentioned in previous videos, dealing damage leads to frags lead to map control, and map control leads to completing the objective, and the objective is paramount. Basically, damage is good. You flush most of your damage dealing potential down the toilet when you equip a shield, and even more when you equip the booties. A counter argument to this would be that Demoknight is less of a damage dealer and more of a pick class. I would definitely agree with this, but my rebuttal would be that Demoknight is basically just a worse sniper and spy when you're playing against competent players. Okay, I think that I have built a pretty watertight argument so far. To reiterate, I am in no way saying that you shouldn't play Demoknight or that I don't like Demoknight. I'm not going to tell you not to comment saying this because I'll take the extra interactions on this video, but if you try strawmanning me like that in the comments, you are going to look like an idiot who didn't even bother to watch the video. The final piece of the puzzle here is competitive. Demoknight in casual is already pretty weak. You're basically just a worse spy or sniper, as I just said. In competitive, Demoknight goes from bad to straight up throw-in. Both Highlander and Sixes have a class limit of 1 Demoman, so by choosing to play Demoknight, you are not only giving up damage and area denial, but also making sure that nobody else on your team gets to play stock Demoman. Outside of the class limits, Demoknight is still just bad and competitive for all the reasons I already mentioned in this video, just multiplied by like 5 or at least 2. Demoman's entire role in competitive orbits around his ability to deal damage and deny space, which he cannot do effectively without the sticky bomb launcher. If anybody is able to make Demoknight in competitive actually work, it in all honesty says more about the skill gap between the teams than it does about the viability of Demoknight. Alright, that is about all I have to say about the viability of Demoknight. To be honest, I was having a lot more fun playing Hybrid Knight with the Tide Turner and going for Trimps at every opportunity than I was playing full Demoknight because full Demoknight is just so rough in pubs. Maybe I was wrong about the Tide Turner. Anyways, thank you for watching the video.
No, shit, no! Sam, there's 2 spies! What? What? No, dude, I'm clipping that. You have no, dude. You shield bash him and it flew him behind me.
I didn't shield bash anybody. I
Dude,
charged.
I
I charged after you died. I didn't do any damage to him. You just got owned. You just
Yeah, okay. I clipped it. I clipped it because that's actually some like that. That spy is literally that's like his.
Alright, well,
best
here's
stat
what
he's
you're
ever
gonna
gotten
do.
in
You're
his
gonna send
life.
that clip to me, and then you're gonna look like an idiot because it's gonna be the end of the video. So.
Dude, I don't even. No, shit, no! Sam, there's 2 spies! What? What?